I suppose in theory you could create a graph with this, plot the 2 points, and then do your counting. But if they give you points that are really, really far apart, you might have a hard time. Okay, so I'm going to give you a rule and an equation, like kind of a thing you'll carry with you for a while. Okay, I said slope. So here we want to determine the equation, right? Again, if you see the equation in this course, we're talking about y equals mx plus b. Okay, we're not doing anything else fancy in this course for the most part. If I say determine the equation, we're likely talking about a line. So you could write that down. Okay, so you want to be able to produce something like this, and there's some components in here that you don't know, right? One of which I'm going to start with finding the slope. Okay, and this is a key skill that you have to have coming out of this course for sure. Okay, like I said, I'm 90% sure they'll probably ask you this on EQAO. Okay, so when you're given 2 points, right? Remember, what are points? What are points made up of? Yes, Rob?
Like coordinates? Like
Yeah, what makes up a coordinate?
X and Y.
An X and a Y, right? I don't mean for that to be a complicated question. I think it does come across like a complicated question because you start overthinking it. But this is very important. This is, and you'll see why in a second. Okay. So you have 2 points on a grid. Okay, and what I think your first move is to find the slope. Find slope. Okay. So we know already slope. I haven't shown you this part yet, but we do know that slope is equal to rise over run. Okay. I'm going to show you I'm just going to give you a whole bunch of equal statements here. Okay, I'm allowed to write multiple equal signs in this line because these are all truly equal. Okay? When you guys are doing solutions, don't write multiple equal signs per line because they're not equal. Right? You can't have one thing equal to another, but this is a true statement. Okay? Slope is equal to rise over run. I'm going to teach you something. Do we know what that little symbol stands for? First of all, it's a Greek letter. Do we know which Greek letter it is? Kenneth? No. Yes?
Delta.
It's delta. What does delta measure typically? Do you guys know? Yeah?
Change it.
It's a change in. It's a change in something. So you have like a delta T. Delta T would be like the change in temperature or something, right? So this is the change in what goes up and down on a graph. Is it X or Y? Yeah? Y. So it's the change in Y, that's rise up and down, over a change in run, X. Okay, that's delta. Okay? Now, this is I think the part you haven't seen before. Well, you haven't seen that before either, but how do we measure the change in something? So if I put delta T, that looks like an 8, sorry. How would you find the change in temperature, for instance? You would take the final temperature and subtract off where you started, T1. Right? So you take your final minus your initial. That's a change in something. Right? It gives you a number that represents how much it grew or shrunk. Okay? See, that's all I'm asking you to do here. Except it's not T, it's not temperature, it's X and Y. So you're going to go Y2, take away Y1. That's the change in the Y's. Divide that by X2, take away X1. That's the change in the run, or the X values. Okay? That's all you need to know. Then we're going to revisit these points here. Does anybody have any questions before I get carried away here? Yes, Rob?
Are we gonna see any of these on like tests or?
I can put these questions on the test. Basically, anything graphing related is fair game. And if I ask you, this is like, this linear, we're gonna spend a lot, like, so when you guys ask about when the summative is, I don't actually know because there's so much linear stuff. Like, linear is such a big part of the scores. Like, we might be in this for the rest of this. It depends on how it goes. It might be like end of next week, we do a summative on linear, just to give you guys some time to study and stuff too. There's lots and lots of stuff in this. Okay, and it transposes itself in, like, the very first thing I do in grade 10 is I spend probably 7 days on linear stuff to recap grade 9. Because there's such a foundation that you need before moving on to other things. Okay, so this is very, so we take our time through this part in particular because it is very, very important. Okay, so here's what I want to do now. Okay, what do you notice? What's interesting about this particular equation? I have one y value, two y values, two x values. Do we agree? Do I not have all that information on my page? Okay, well, let's go here. I have one x value, one y value, and I also have a second x value and a second y value. We all see that? So if I'm measuring the change in something, I'm looking at, like, say, the change in the rise or how tall something is. I'm looking at y2 take away y1. Okay, so you're going to plug that in. Just those numbers verbatim. You're going to go 9. What's y2? I always like labeling this too. When I did this for the very first time, I never got it. But once I started labeling everything, it was like easy. You can't mess it up. So when you see 2 points like that, it doesn't matter which one you call. Just because this is in order and I called it x1 and y1, you could flip-flop them around too. Okay, you could go like this. You could call this one 2 and 2 and 1 and 1. What's very important is you don't switch. You don't match x1, y2. That's not allowed. Can't do that. Okay? Can't swap points around like that, but you can call like a coordinate point x1, y1, and y1, sorry, x2, y2. Okay, that's allowed. But anyway, I'll go back to the original because I think that's intuitive. Whatever one comes first, just label it that way. Okay, so this will be 1 and 2 and 2. Okay, so we're going to go 9, take away 5. You see where that came from? 9, take away 5. And then on the bottom, going to do the x's. -3, take away 9. Okay, you just do the math on it. That tells you your slope. Whatever it comes out to be is what it comes out to be. 9 take away 5 is? 4. And -3 take away 9. -12. Can I reduce that fraction? Yes, Opal? They're both divisible by 4. Okay? And so we can go m. M is equal to 4 divided by 4 is going to be 1. And -12 divided by 4 is going to be -3. Okay. At this point, if nobody has any questions, I'll let you stare at that for a second, get copied down. Okay. this is probably one of the most, kids choose not to listen to me, and then they get questions wrong. I would say, just do this. Just do what I do, because I was by no means anywhere remotely close to the level of intelligence that you are all at in school. Trust me. So I have navigated every single barrier that you will ever encounter. And I have found that all these things that I show you guys, this is, I think, what, like, to a heart, this is, I think, why I'm, like, particularly decent at my job. Is because I know where you're going to go, and if you just do what I do, you're never going to hit the blockades I hit. Okay, so when I tell you to do something, I'm not doing it just because. Okay? Here's what I would do with these questions. If we revisit our equation here, look at all the things that I need to know in there. I need to know y, I don't know. M, I just found it, which is good. I don't know what x is, and I don't know what b is. Okay, so there's 4 things there, right? And I found one of them. Okay, so let's go. Okay, M, good. I'm going to make a list. Okay, and I know M is good. I want to know what x is. I want to know what y is. And I want to know what b is. Okay, now, I want you to have a look at the page for this question. And I want you to tell me if there is somewhere on that page that tells you some information. In the question. So once I'm going to ask a question, Amanda, and then you can answer. Based on what I've written in my list of things that I need to know, can you find that information on your page? I think we've done a large part of the heavy lifting already. Amanda, what did you find?
You could just use the coordinate listed.
Which one?
For x and y, you could just use 9 and 5.
Does it matter which one you pick?
No, not
Why not?
because either way, the coordinates are the same.
Yeah. So if I were to draw this on like a grid, whatever, I'm going to sketch it. Okay, 9, 5. 9, 5 is up here. This would be 9, 5. And then I'm going to have negative 3 and 9. Negative 3 and 9 would be up here. Okay? So the way these things work, that's not even really that close. But anyway, I'm just doing this for... Both of those points, you can agree, are on that graph. Does everybody agree? If they didn't, then you wouldn't have a graph. So it doesn't matter what you pick here, but it is true that both of these points have an x and a y value. Both of them. And because they're on the same graph, it doesn't matter which one you pick. It will matter. You cannot do this. Don't do this. I'm going to take negative 3 and I'm going to take 5. Don't do that. You take both of one. You cannot selectively choose from either of them. Okay? You can pick between each of them individually, but you cannot mix stuff. Okay? So here's what I'm going to say to you. I'm going to go back to my list of things that I know and don't know. I know this particular point lies on my graph, and I have an x and I have a y. So I'm going to fill them in my knowns and unknowns. X is negative 3. Y is 9. Okay, you are now in the position. You have 3 knowns and 1 unknown. You can solve for it. Okay, you're going to rewrite your equation and fill in all the information you know in your equation. So I'm going to go, okay, what's y? Oh, y is 9. 9 equals m. M is negative 1/3. I'm going to multiply m by x. Oh, x is negative 3 plus b. Okay, now you can do the math. Look, we already did some fraction stuff today. Negative 1/3 multiplied by negative 3. What can I always do? Divide by 1. Multiply tops and tops and bottoms, right? What do we get? We get 3 over 3, which is equal to 1. So we get 9 equals 1 plus b. How could you solve for b? Take away 1. Take away 1. Okay, I know I probably lost some of you, which is fine. This is a lot. Okay, and we can do some more questions. It's all right. Okay. But the whole question asked us to do what? Didn't just ask us to solve for a bunch of stuff. What did it say? Find the, Robin? Equation. Okay, you now have found all the components of it, but you haven't written it down for me. Are we going to write this though? Don't write this. This looks silly. You'll understand why. Don't do this, because it's just doesn't make sense. To me, it doesn't make any sense. Maybe to you, it makes sense. Does that look like an equation? It's something. It's definitely something. And it definitely checks out. Like, you'll get left side equals right side, but it's not an equation. An equation allows you to solve for multiple points on a graph. Okay, so what I want to see and what you'll see in the multiple choice for EQAO will be this. You leave y as a general thing. Negative 1/3. X is a general thing. Plus 8. That's what you're going to see in your answers for EQAO. That is the answer to this question. That is the equation that represents the line between the 2 points that were given to you at the very, very beginning. Okay? You can use that equation to find any point that you want along that line. Anywhere. And we've already seen that in our patterning, right? If you want to see what's the y value when x equals 349, it'll tell you. It'll tell you where you're at on the graph. Okay? That's why this is powerful. And this one is just nonsense. Okay? It's just the numbers. All right? Do we have any questions? We still got a few minutes. I'm going to hand out your homework. Yeah, Aaron?
If you can find the equation using a different method, will you mark it wrong?
No, depends what the method is. What did you do?